What is going on, you guys? Welcome back to a brand new video. In today's video, I'm going to be showcasing my 12k stat Adele bossing mule, going through its equips, nodes, arcane force, and all that stuff. First things first, I just kind of want to give my overall thoughts on this class. If you guys know, I used to hate this class. I'm not gonna lie. When I first started bossing on this, I hated this class. I didn't want to play it. I thought it was the worst bossing mule ever. I never recommended it to anybody. But when I finally decided to take this thing to 220, put some funding into it, it actually is really good. And I just want to do a quick tip. This is overall on any boss mule that you have. If you are making boss mules, it is so important to get them to level 220. Not just because you get the node slots, but you also get a single point every single time you level up, and that adds up a lot when going from 200 to 220. That's 20 free points that you get, and you also get stats into your inner ability, which is huge, your hyper stats, all that stuff. It's really good. It's so much more than a node slot. Like, it just gives you so much extra final damage, and it literally gives you final damage over Lotus and Damien, which is huge. It's just so important. So make sure when you're making a boss mule, like, you don't really give your overall thoughts until you have it to 220 and properly funded. But yeah, I am absolutely loving this Adele as a bossing mule now. Again, like, I need to stop making videos on bossing mules until I have them at level 220 and they're properly funded. Now, we'll move on to the equips. The equips are pretty good. They're juiced up a little bit, but they're not crazy juice. As you can see, I do have some rare items on this, but I do have a lot of 17-star equips. I spent a good amount of money on this boss mule last 5, 10, 15 event because, like I said earlier, I hated this thing and I was like, this does no damage. It sucks. I just didn't like this class. So I was like, if I overfund it, maybe it'll be better. But even when I funded it, it was still horrible because I had it at level 205, and I thought that just because the equips were good, I can do bosses at level 205. Wrong. Get it to level 220 and then make your decision. Anyways, the equips are they're all right. I do have some more upgrades to do on this thing still because I do want to get this to like 15k stat like over time. Obviously, it's a slow journey to get to that point, but it's gonna be worth it just because like it'll make the bosses so much faster. And that's kind of the point I want to get to for all my boss mules, where they're just really comfortable in every single boss. Keep in mind, like, I have played this boss mule and all my boss mules at like a really low funded tier, so I'm giving you my opinion on when these are both funded and pretty underfunded. And also, this thing is only 2 set superior as well. This is why I always recommend anybody who's funding their bossing mules to go for reinforced. If I would have went for reinforced, I would have been done. When you're making your boss mules, it doesn't matter what class you're doing it, always go for reinforced. Now let's get into what I think of it as a bossing mule. This class really did surprise me once I funded it a little bit and got it to 220. It melts bosses. It's actually really fun to play, but I will say that there is a lot of micromanaging while playing this class. So if you don't like thinking while bossing on a boss mule, I wouldn't recommend Adele. It is really rewarding and fun once you learn it, but learning it is pretty frustrating, I'm not gonna lie, and there is a lot of stuff to keep track of and a lot of stuff to micromanage while bossing. It's not just setting up the burst that's hard, but it's also keeping everything up during the burst. That's also a little challenging. There's definitely a learning curve while playing Adele, but like I said, it is worth it. There are some cons about this class, which I'll go into right now. One thing that I don't like is that you constantly have to have your swords up all the time, and if you die after getting your swords up, you have to re-get your swords up, which there's a gauge, and you have to hit, like, you have to attack a certain amount of times before you can get one sword, and then use that sword, and then you have to get another sword. Like, it's just a constant cycle that's really annoying, and I wish that they fixed that. I'm not gonna lie. Even when you have buff freezers, like, the swords, they go away. Always have to make sure that you have to be using Renaissance Rush all the time, because if that stack goes down, you lose a lot of final damage, you lose IED. You also have to make sure that the boss is marked. These are things that obviously if you play Adele and you main Adele, you're not really gonna think about. You're gonna say, like, how is that micromanaging? But for somebody and for a lot of people who are playing Adele as a boss mule, like, this is something that they're not used to. At least for me, I come from playing like a bowmaster, pretty beginner friendly to play, and then moving to Adele, which is kind of a lot of stuff to keep up with. Also, their grandest goddess blessing, this is getting fixed, but this is just a con for right now. It's 4 minutes and their burst is 3 minutes, so it never lines up, which is really frustrating because grandest goddess blessing does a lot of damage. Thankfully, that is getting fixed, so this is going to be even a better bossing mule. after ignition, which is crazy. Like, this thing already melts, I'm not gonna lie. Like, this thing really does melt. I don't even have guild skills on when I'm doing these bosses, and like, it's doing Lotus and Damien pretty fast, especially for a class that relies on the boss to be kind of idle. That's pretty fast. But I mean, as for cons, that's pretty much all that there are. The bind is like a little wonky, sometimes it misses, but you know, it's just like a hands thing. It happens, binds miss. Other than that, this is a pretty good and strong bossy mule. Like I said earlier, there is a lot of stuff to be micromanaging and setting up. So again, this is just, I just keep saying this, but it is a learning curve. There is a lot of stuff. So if you don't like playing classes that you have to do a lot of stuff to keep the damage up, I don't recommend playing this class. I really don't. But if you are a type of person that likes that rewarding feeling of doing everything right and then being rewarded for doing everything right, I think this is like the perfect boss mule for you. I'm not gonna lie. But aside from this thing being strong and all like the micromanaging, I kind of want to go into the nodes that I have on this class. The nodes are pretty juiced. I'm not gonna lie, they're pretty good. But one thing that is good about Adele is that the trios are pretty easy to find, so you're not gonna have to be using like hundreds and hundreds of nodes to find one trio, and they don't need a ton of node slots. I think 220 is fine. 220 is more than enough node slots for this as a boss mule. But yeah, the nodes are pretty straightforward, pretty easy to get. I just want to show the nodes just because a lot of people are always curious, like, how is this person's funding compared to mine? But yeah, these are my nodes. Now I just want to kind of move into some tips and tricks that I learned while playing Adele as a boss mule. Obviously my brother mains this class. It might be a little difficult if you don't have someone to ask questions, because like I said, there is so much stuff, and if someone's not telling you like how to play this thing efficiently, like, you might be missing out on a lot of damage. The first thing, always using noble summons and gather bloom every single time they're off cooldown. I would always look at Gather Bloom's cooldown, because noble summons and Gather Bloom have two different cooldowns, which is really annoying. I wish that they fixed that, or wish that they changed that. But looking at Gather Bloom, when that's up, that means noble summons will also be up. I remember I would always look at noble summons, and when that was up, I would just press it instantly, but Gather Bloom wouldn't be off cooldown. It sounds really confusing. It's really annoying. If you know, you know. Also, always when you enter a boss, use Renaissance, Rush, and Grave Proclamation. This instantly gives you 20% damage and 10% ID from Grave Proclamation, and 10% final damage and another 10% ID when you stack Renaissance Rush 2 times. But these do go down, so you have to keep using Renaissance Rush. Renaissance Rush lasts 30 seconds, so just make sure like you're always rushing the boss. Just get used to using it a lot, and then make sure your swords are up all the time. These do pretty much all your damage, and don't die. Try not to die, because when you die, like, the swords go down. It's really annoying and it's frustrating. So those are just some tips and tricks that I thought that I'd share with you guys, because it helped me a lot and just does a lot of damage. Also, when you're considering this as a boss mule, this thing does have pretty low IED and pretty low crit rate. So if you don't have 8k Legion, I don't know if I would recommend Adele as a boss mule for you. And once again, if you don't like classes that require a lot of micromanaging, I do not recommend Adele as a boss mule. But if you are someone that does like it, highly recommend it. It's really fun. Overall thoughts, I want to give this thing an 8 out of 10, but there is a lot of stuff that goes into Adele, so I think for that reason I would give it a 7.5, which is still a pretty solid score. Yeah, if you guys have an Adele boss mule, let me know in the comments if you guys like it, if you guys don't like it, if you guys have any tips and tricks for other people. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about this class. And as always, hope you guys have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.